Okay, modern society, can we not just enjoy a throwback, gory, violent action film for exactly what it is? A gory, violent action film? So Rambo Last Blood tells the story of John Rambo once again getting pulled into the call of action when a girl that he cares very much for is taken by a group of Mexican sex traffickers. Well, we're here, people. Rambo Last Blood, the new installment in the Rambo franchise and the culmination of my Rambo review series. Before I get into my thoughts, as all of these reviews, this is also going to be reviewed by Sean Chandler over on Sean Chandler Talks About. I'm going to have his link down below in the video description and as a pinned comment. Definitely go over to his channel if you have not already been over there, if you're not already a subscriber. Check out his thoughts. We've had some different views with him having much more nostalgia for a couple of these movies and me kind of looking at him from a modern eye, especially the second and third film. But with a lot of aspects of these Rambo movies, we've seen pretty eye to eye. And I have a feeling that we're going to see very eye to eye on this one because we were texting and chatting back and forth whenever we both get out of the movies and seem to have a lot of the same thoughts. So go over, check out Sean Chandler Talks About, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and tell him that Cody sent you. Now, as far as my thoughts on Rambo Last Blood, I've been very excited for this. The trailers looked great. It looked very kind of throwback. It looked very grounded. It looked a lot more small scale than some of the big, huge action set pieces that we've seen in the middle 3 chapters. And I kind of like the Western vibe it had going for it. It reminded me a lot of Logan, like the trailer for Logan whenever that came out. It kind of had that same vibe going for it. And being that it was called Last Blood, this seemed like this was going to be the swan song or the departing chapter of John Rambo, which has my attention. If you have a beloved character like this that I love very much and have enjoyed a lot of his movies and hold the first one especially so dear that I want to see how this mofo might be going out. So starting right off with the positives for Rambo Last Blood, the first one, which is the main thing that the trailer kind of promised you, and the main thing that previous installments have promised you, and the main thing that they really had to nail to have my satisfaction for what I wanted from this movie. And that's the action, the bloody, gory, over-the-top, violent action that they have in the second and third act of this film, and they deliver that in spades. It's probably not as brutal as Rambo 4, but it's certainly as gory as Rambo 4. There's definitely, you're seeing decapitations, you're seeing limbs getting blown off and torn off, you're seeing a lot of stabs, a lot of heads getting shot with shotguns, a lot of arrow injuries. There is a big variety of ways that Rambo dispatches his bloody, very painful revenge in the second and third act of this film. And when you get to that section of the movie, like you can just feel it in the theater. Everybody's like, here it is, this is what we paid for, and they deliver. Also, much like in Rambo 4, they do a really good job at setting up the villains in this. Not in a sense of like fleshing out their character because they're not really big or even deep characters, but they really establish them as really evil, hateful, despicable people that you as an audience member cannot wait to see get blown to bloody chunks by John Rambo in the culmination of the movie. So just like in Rambo 4 where you see the Burmese going through all of these vicious acts towards women and children and these villagers and just killing people left and right, this one goes in a much different route, some might say darker route, with establishing these Mexican sex traffickers and what they do to these young girls. And by the time it comes to the point where Rambo is going to come after them, you are ready for him to come after them. Now, speaking about Rambo, I do also like that this movie kind of gives us a different shade of Rambo. This is probably the most human that we've ever seen John Rambo. Sylvester Stallone has this thing where, you know, he keeps going back to Rocky and Rambo so many times throughout his career. There's been spots where it felt like he wasn't, and then he surprises us and does another one where, much more so with Rocky, but with Rambo we're starting to get it as well, where you see these characters that we know and love through different eras of their life and different mental states and, you know, different reactions to the world that they currently live in. And we get that with Rambo through the first 4 movies and now into this 5th one, where here he's kind of found home in a way. You know, that's where Rambo 4 ended, with him finally going back home and, you know, kind of bookending that whole aimlessly walking the earth theme that they had from First Blood. This one, he feels like he's at home. He feels like life kind of has a purpose and he can kind of leave a lot of his demons out there and not necessarily be so focused on how broken he is and how hurt he is and how much stress and all the PTSD that he has from the time in Vietnam and certainly probably the events of the last 4 movies. But you feel like Rambo is a regular guy. You feel like he's a human. He doesn't really have that larger-than-life, indestructible killing machine aspect to him for the first half of this movie. He feels like a genuine guy with some secrets, with a lot of stories to tell, but a guy that would probably do anything for you. And that's a different shade of Rambo that we've seen. It's certainly a different shade than what we saw in the previous movie where he was very just shut off from everything. And by establishing his relationship with this girl Gabby, this young girl who's basically, for all intents and purposes, his daughter, that really fleshes out that human side of Rambo that we've never got to see before. We've seen sprinkles of it. There was a little bit of that love interest in Rambo 2 that got cut very short. There was a little bit of that kind of being charmed by Julie Benz's character in Rambo 4, where you kind of see him start to latch on to the goodness in the world and the humanity and wanting that to prevail over like the Burmese. You get to this one and he just wants to shield this girl from everything that he has experienced in life. All of the darkness, all the evil, all the blood, all the killing. He wants her to have the most lighted life that he can possibly give her. And for somebody that is not actually her father, you really latch onto that storyline and you root for Rambo. You root for his goal to shield her from that. And it's a good way to kick off the storyline for where this movie goes as far as him having to go after whoever took her and find her and bring her back. And going past all of like the emotional sides of the character and the human side of the character, Stallone's still a badass. You still believe that this version of John Rambo, this much older, more grizzled version of John Rambo could fuck you up and could tear through any force that gets between him and what he is striving for. So all the action scenes, they totally work. The whole intimidation factor that he goes for in some of the scenes in this movie of trying to talk information out of people and trying to muscle information out of people, you believe that they would be scared enough to give that information up.
And if it comes looking for me, they will welcome death.
Moving on to the mixed aspects, although I do really like the way that they flesh out Rambo utilizing this girl Gabby, she is a bit of a frustrating character because not only does it seem like she's a much more amateur actor than somebody like Stallone, and there's scenes where you do feel like that, where the dialogue doesn't quite flow the way that it should. It's not a huge thing, it's not terrible, it doesn't really stand out like a sore thumb, but you notice it a little bit here and there where it just feels like her 5th or 6th take whenever she's given some dialogue back and forth with Rambo, especially the more emotional stuff. But she's a very frustrating character in the same way that the missionaries were in Rambo, where the storyline that they present for why she gets herself into this situation, especially as a father, it just has you beating your fist under the chair like, you idiot, why don't you ever listen? And even though that's realistic, kids don't listen, especially when they're at that 17, 18-year-old age and they think that they know everything. I was certainly that way. It is frustrating to watch where you're like, God damn it, all of this is because of you. And now moving on to the negatives. And the main one that stood out to me while I was watching the movie and certainly after the credits rolled and I walked out of it is that this movie feels very rushed. It's a tight, I don't even think it's 90 minutes. It might be like 88 or 89 minutes. Not that it's a huge difference, but it's a short movie. And while they definitely flesh out a lot of the more character-driven stuff in the first act, trying to establish where Rambo is and his relationships with these people on this ranch, whenever it gets to the middle section of the movie, whenever things start to really kick into high gear, the movie feels like it goes on fast forward. It feels like the passage of time in certain scenes where it's presumably days between event A and event D, but it's like 30 seconds within the movie. That feels very odd. Whenever you actually get to the third act, even though it's very satisfying and there is a ton of gory, blood-soaked violence to satisfy all your little gory ass hearts, it does feel quick. It feels like the whole build-up of this movie should have been about 10 minutes longer, maybe had a little bit more variety in the setting, and the movie overall just feels like. And there's sections where it feels like the movie should breathe a little bit more. You could use a good 15 minutes added to this film to flesh out the second and the third act a little bit more, and especially into the climax and the ending of this film, which I'm not going to spoil, but not only does it feel kind of abrupt, But kind of going into another negative of mine, I said in my previous review that I love the way that that film ends with him kind of bookending his walking the earth journey and finally coming home with the same duffel bag and the same look that he had in First Blood, kind of, you know, bringing everything full circle for that character. That as an ending is way more satisfying than what we get here. You know, we've seen plenty of movies where you get the big, huge, hulking, glistening muscles holding onto a gigantic machine gun just mowing people down, or a gigantic grenade launcher, a rifle that's this big, but you don't always get to remember or go back to the more silent killer side of Rambo. And that's kind of what they were calling back to with the third act of this film and the approach to this climax. So I see the Home Alone comparisons like at face value, but at the same time it's kind of unfounded to a certain degree. The one that I don't hear near as much, which to me is way more obvious in this film, is that this is basically Sylvester Stallone's take on Taken. It's almost beat for beat Taken for the first 2/3 of this film. Like, a lot. It's a lot of that movie. The young girl that he cares for, she gets taken in by these sex traffickers. Rambo kind of goes and, puts the threat out there. They don't take him seriously, and all of a sudden it comes to this huge explosion where they realize that this dude they probably shouldn't have fucked with. It's the same exact thing as Liam Neeson's Taken. Now, while that seems very frustrating on paper, it does work. It does work in this movie, and it does work in this kind of standalone story that they're going for at this stage of Rambo's life. But at the same time, it's a little frustrating for me because not only have we had 3 Taken movies somewhat recently, but there's been 10 years since the last Rambo film. And it feels to me that even if they had like a first draft script, or Sylvester Stallone hammered out this great idea for a Rambo sequel, and then Taken came out and he was like, oh shit, well, I guess I gotta wait a while before I put this out. To me, why wouldn't you just come up with something different? Why wouldn't you just spin the story a little bit more, bridge out and do something a little bit different? Like, as somebody who's seen Taken and loves this genre of movies, when you see a Rambo sequel that's billed as the final, the last blood, and it feels derivative of something that came out in another franchise, it's a little disappointing. And I will say there are moments which I don't know whether to blame the director or not. The only other thing that I've seen this director do is Get the Gringo, which was a pretty good movie with Mel Gibson. I don't know if it's a lack of direction or if it's just kind of Sylvester Stallone's old age or a combination of the two, but there's moments in this movie, especially whenever he's delivering like the monologues, the Sylvester Stallone monologues. We get like one in every movie now, ever since Rocky Balboa, that is like the quote that you would put on a plaque from that movie. Like Rambo was, live for nothing or die for something. You get to this one, and whenever you get those speech moments, I don't know if he was actively trying to sound tired and actively trying to sound like a little bit more wore down, but they don't really have the punch that they should. They almost feel tired. They feel like he's not giving it his all. And like I said, I don't know if that's an active, conscious choice by the director or Stallone, but to me, those moments fell flat. When those should be like the moments where you get pumped up, you're like, yeah, Rambo, tell me, baby. You get to it in this and you're kind of like, okay, all right, start killing people. And going along with that, if I can be completely honest, it's not that this feels like a Taken movie, it just has that template to the story, but with those story and theme elements that they try to put into this, and with the direction they go with the character of Rambo, this is the least Rambo feeling Rambo movie. It feels like something else that maybe those scripts that you get, like Hellraiser's a famous one where it was made for a standalone movie and then they threw Pinhead in there and decided to market it as a Hellraiser movie. This feels like somebody had a script for this revenge thriller and then inserted John Rambo. It doesn't necessarily feel like a Rambo film. It doesn't necessarily feel like an organic chapter in this franchise. It's a great standalone throwback action film, and you will enjoy it very much if you walk in with those expectations, but the transition from 4 to this one doesn't necessarily work as well as 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Here, I need to say one thing. I already hinted at it in my intro, but something that's very, very frustrating as a fan of this genre. People, I understand that today is like the big politically correct and everything offends everybody era, but why is it that every time we get like a violent throwback action film like this, everybody loses their mind and starts, assigning racism to this? Like if John Rambo was dispatching a group of neo-Nazis that kidnapped this girl, it would be okay, but because it's a Mexican cartel or a Mexican group of sex traffickers. It's racist. Like, it's about a good guy or a killing machine taking out evil in the world. It doesn't really assign a color to that aside from just fitting that storyline in there about the Mexican cartel or the Mexican sex traffickers or the Burmese or the Vietnamese or the Russians. Like, why is it so offensive nowadays? Why is it so wrong to have a movie like this? They had the same thing when Death Wish came out. Oh, it's about a white guy walking around killing people. I understand it's a sensitive subject, especially whenever we have a lot of shootings nowadays, but this is fiction. This is not glorifying, you know, the shit that we see on the news. This is throwback, action, violent entertainment. If you don't get it, that's fine, but it doesn't make it racist. It doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make it tone deaf or anything like that. It's just not your thing. Let it not be your thing. Some of us, it is our thing. But overall, guys, I did like this movie. It is a very satisfying throwback, violent as hell action film. If you saw reviews for films like Death Wish that everybody hated and I loved, that's just my genre. I love throwback to that era of action films. I think that they could still work today. I just feel like today's climate just doesn't really understand them as much as some of us fans that kind of long for that era of films that we grew up on. And this very much fills that void. Does it feel like a Rambo film? Not completely. Is it the most satisfying closing chapter? Not necessarily, but the action is great. Stallone is still great in the role. I like seeing this different, kind of more grounded human version of Rambo, and it certainly keeps your attention. It's a very quick, short movie, so it's an entertaining experience if you know what you're getting into. If you expect anything else beyond what this genre typically delivers, you're gonna be disappointed.
I want them to know that death is coming. And there's nothing they can do to stop it.
So if you're a fan of the Rambo franchise and you want to see where John Rambo is and what he's going to do in his possibly last outing, check this film out because it's going to deliver a lot of what you love from this genre and a lot of what you love from this franchise. Just keep your expectations modest. It doesn't quite reach the heights of First Blood, but it's a very entertaining, satisfying, violent, action-packed entry in the Rambo franchise. So be patient and check this thing out whenever it hits online and stream it. So what did you guys think of Rambo Last Blood? Do you feel like this is a fulfilling final chapter? Do you feel like this is where you want to see Rambo go out? Do you feel like this is your favorite in the franchise? Is this your least favorite in the franchise? Did you love the violence? Did you hate the violence? Were you offended at all with this movie? Try to make me understand that bullshit down below, please. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comment section below what you thought and what is your favorite Rambo movie. We can talk about that now. Keep an eye out for my ranking. That'll be coming this weekend. And head on over to Sean Chandler Talks About. The link will be down below. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. If you guys want to check out some social media links, check the video description below for all of those like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. My Patreon page, which is a great way to give back to this channel, help this channel grow and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to become a patron. And below the video description, you can scroll down right now and see my Spreadshirt store, which has got all of my Cody Leach designs, and you can get different merchandise like t-shirts, cinch bags, mugs, and everything. There's a new Autop Stream design down there, designed by the awesome Woody Bowen. Check that out as well. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, you can check out a few more by clicking right over here.